Hey guys, tonight we're taking a gentle, deliriously absurd tumble through the silk-draped, linoleum-floored, and occasionally hallucinating world of the 1920s American housewife. That's right. Tonight we're talking about how American women, armed with aprons, feather dusters, and entirely too much nerve tonic, became some of the earliest loyal customers of a little chemical wonder we now know as Valium's awkward older cousin, the original tranquilizers. This is the secret, bubbling, sometimes literally fizzing saga of the bored, exhausted, and highly medicated queens of suburbia. Forget Gatsby, forget flappers. This is history at its most sleep-deprived, frazzled, and gently sedated. Before you drift off, take a second to like this video and subscribe, but only if you actually enjoy what I do here. Seriously, don't force it. Leave a comment below telling me where you're listening from and what time it is for you. Now, dim the lights, crank up a fan for that soothing hum, and make yourself as comfortable as a 1920s housewife with 3 layers of petticoats and no air conditioning. Maybe grab a glass of water. Or, if you're feeling historically accurate, some Dr. Caldwell's nerve elixir with a suspiciously high alcohol content. Let's pause for a second. Have you ever wondered what daily life was actually like for these women? Was their day really just baking pies and waiting for a husband who smelled like engine grease? How did they cope with screaming toddlers, endless dust, and the threat of surprise visits from their mother-in-law? Did anyone ever finish their chores? Did they really vacuum in heels? And what exactly was in those mysterious nerve tonics that doctors were handing out like Tic Tacs? Would you have made it through a 1920s Tuesday without threatening to run away with the milkman? And most importantly, how did America become a nation of housewives who thought tranquilizers sounded more like an after-dinner mint than a pharmaceutical warning label? Well, congratulations. You've just woken up in 1926, in a modest clapboard house, on the edge of a rapidly spreading suburb. The refrigerator hums like a distant freight train. Your husband's shoes are exactly where you'll trip on them, and there's a bottle of calming tonic tucked behind the flower. Good luck. The sun slips through thin curtains as you wake to the cheerful soundtrack of your neighbor's Model T stalling. You're not greeted by birdsong, but by the persistent smell of burnt toast and the gentle suspicion that your children are already fighting over who gets to cough first. Your day starts with a jolt, not from caffeine, but from the distant whiff of ammonia and anxiety. It's barely 6:30 a.m., but the house is already humming with that particular energy only found in homes run entirely on obligation, low-level panic, and whatever's left of last night's calmative. Your husband's alarm, clock, state-of-the-art, bought on sale at Montgomery Ward, has been blaring for 3 minutes, and he's somehow still asleep, snoring like an optimistic lawnmower. You, however, have been up since the first creak of the floorboards in the hallway, a skill you developed somewhere between your second child and your third nervous breakdown. There's no such thing as snooze. Your day begins the moment a small hand pokes you in the rib and a voice whispers the dreaded words, "Mom, I don't feel so good," followed by the sound of something sticky hitting the linoleum. You sigh, slip on your house slippers, one of which is definitely damp for reasons you don't want to know, and shuffle toward the chaos. Let's talk about your bedroom for a moment. The bedspread, which you hand-stitched from leftover flour sacks, is a little lumpy. But at least it's not covered in that mystery powder the baby found last week. The wallpaper peels artistically at the corners. Pinterest chic if Pinterest had been invented. And you've mastered the art of hanging curtains so they hide the worst water stains. The window rattles every time a truck drives by. But you tell yourself it's character, not potential home insurance claim. You peer out the window and catch a glimpse of Mrs. O'Malley next door, already dressed, hair done, waving cheerily with a mug of something suspiciously dark. She's been up since 5, kneading bread and plotting the downfall of your rhododendrons. You wave back with the energy of someone who has not yet remembered how to smile. Somewhere, a radio coughs to life, crackling out the morning news, full of words like progress and opportunity, none of which seem to apply to people wearing yesterday's apron. You shuffle down the hall, every floorboard a musical note in the morning symphony of complaints. Your eldest has already claimed the bathroom, practicing for a future career as a professional door slammer. The youngest is making an experimental breakfast on the kitchen floor. Flour, water, and half a bottle of vanilla extract. You breathe in and catch that uniquely 1920s blend. Soap flakes, hair tonic, bacon grease, and the haunting memory of last night's onions. Breakfast isn't a meal, it's an obstacle course. You're dodging small children, stray dogs, and the eternal question of where you left your dignity. The toaster burns everything it touches, the coffee is thin enough to see through, and someone is always yelling about the lack of the good jam. You pour milk, real, unpasteurized, questionably lumpy, over oatmeal, and wish you'd remembered to put on your pearls before entering this battle. And through it all, the clock on the wall, smug and relentless, ticks forward. You have exactly 14 minutes to wrangle the children into something resembling clothes, feed your husband a hot breakfast, and answer questions like, why do we have to wear shoes to school? And is Dad really going to work? Or does he just drive around all day? You sigh, pour yourself another cup of coffee, and stare out the kitchen window. Maybe today will be the day the world finally stops spinning long enough for you to sit down, but probably not. Because in 1926, the world belongs to the early risers, the warriors, and the women who somehow manage to do it all, preferably before the second load of laundry. You take a deep breath, adjust your bathrobe, and brace yourself for another round. Welcome to morning American housewife style. Your reward? If you're lucky, it's a quiet moment in the pantry. And maybe, just maybe, a sip of something a little stronger in your tea. You sweep, you scrub, you polish, and yet, somehow, the linoleum is always sticky. Dust multiplies like it's unionized. Your mop is your constant companion. Housework in the 1920s is less a chore and more a Sisyphean epic, minus the Greek tragedy and plus a lot more Lysol fumes. Let's set the scene. You begin your morning, armed with a broom, a bucket, and the faint hope that maybe today will be different. Maybe today, just once, you'll win. The floor will gleam. The children will refrain from launching oatmeal grenades. The dog will not shed an entire second dog on your clean runner. Hope springs eternal, right up until someone sneezes in the hallway and the sound alone is enough to summon a fresh coat of dust. It's not your imagination. Cleanliness is a full-time job, and the odds are stacked against you. Your house is a revolving door of muddy boots, school bags, newspaper-wrapped groceries, and husbands who believe the welcome mat is just a suggestion. No one wipes their feet. The linoleum, advertised in Good Housekeeping as miraculous and modern, turns out to be a magnet for mystery stains. Spills appear without witnesses. Sticky rings materialize under empty jelly jars, and every time you sweep, the dustpan fills up like it's being restocked by little elves with filthy shoes. There's the morning rush. Everyone running in different directions, leaving behind a Hansel and Gretel trail of toast crumbs, hairpins, buttons, and whatever that thing is under the radiator that you're too afraid to look at closely. You kneel and attack the battlefield with a rag, only to discover that yesterday's mop water has developed a distinct bouquet. Ode of forgotten socks. You switch tactics. Out comes the bucket, filled with scalding water, a generous squirt of ammonia, and enough elbow grease to power a small industrial town. The mop slaps, the bristles grind, and you chase phantom stains with the determination of a detective working a cold case. You develop a routine. Sweep, mop, curse, repeat. Every product in your arsenal promises a sparkling home, but the only thing that consistently sparkles is your resolve not to scream. Let's talk about the dust. Modern science claims dust is mostly dead skin cells, but in the 1920s, it's about 10% skin, 20% coal soot, 40% shed fur, and 30% existential dread. Every open window is an invitation. The moment you banish it from the living room, it returns via the parlor, hitching a ride on the newspaper boy's shoes and your husband's trousers. The radio's just announced a new cleaning product, guaranteed to keep floors spotless for a week. But you know it's a lie. At best, you'll get 4 hours, and that's if no one remembers the house contains jam. There's no escape. The kitchen is the worst. It's a high-traffic zone, a cross between a laboratory and a boxing ring. Milk spills, sugar sifts. Every time you kneel to clean, you find crumbs from meals nobody admits to eating. The dog's water bowl has somehow migrated across the room, dragging half the yard with it. And when you finally stand up, proud of your work, a tiny voice yells from the next room, "Mom!" I spilled the ink again. You try to enforce the rules. Shoes off in the hall, you decree. No snacking outside the kitchen. Wipe your feet, or else. Your family nods, smiles, and immediately forgets everything. The only person who remembers is you and your mop, which now feels like an extension of your own weary arm. Yet, you persist. There's an odd comfort in the ritual, the daily reset. Each time you scrub away another sticky patch, you're not just chasing dirt, you're reclaiming a sliver of control from a world that won't sit still. You might never win the war, but for a moment, when the afternoon sun hits the freshly cleaned floor, you can almost believe in the miracle of clean enough. And if all else fails, just remember, dim lighting hides everything. 3 kids, 1 husband, and a dog with boundary issues. Breakfast is served with a side of chaos. Eggs, bacon, toast. Every plate must be hot, and your temper must be cold. It's 7:30 a.m., and you've already lost an hour to searching for the one clean spoon. Let's set the table, metaphorically, because if you actually set the table right now, someone would immediately spill juice across it. The kitchen is alive with shouts, squabbles, and the faint whimper of a stove that's seen better days. Your eldest child is already announcing a new aversion to eggs. The youngest is stuck in an existential crisis about the color of the jam. Your husband is searching for his tie, a process that inexplicably involves standing in the middle of the kitchen, blocking the bread box, and muttering about how things used to be simpler. The dog is underfoot, convinced the only thing standing between him and starvation is you and your wobbly balancing act with the bacon pan. Every move is a gamble. You reach for the skillet, still greasy from last night's emergency grilled cheese, while negotiating peace treaties over the last slice of bread. The toaster, a machine whose only setting is burnt to a crisp, has already claimed 2 victims this morning. The butter is cold, the jam is missing, and the butter coffee percolator bubbles ominously, threatening to unionize if you ask it for one more pot. Timing is everything. The clock ticks, your nerves fray, and every second brings you closer to the moment when 3 plates must land, perfectly assembled, in front of 3 hungry children who immediately compare theirs for signs of injustice. He got more bacon. She got the good plate. The drama rivals anything broadcast on the family radio. You perform a delicate breakfast ballet, scooping oatmeal, flipping pancakes, and fielding philosophical questions like, why can't we just have cake for breakfast? Honestly, you wonder the same thing. And then, the dietary preferences emerge. One wants scrambled eggs, the other wants them runny. The third decides today is the day they're going vegetarian. Your husband's only request is that his coffee is strong, but never strong enough for him to remember where he left his hat. The dog has somehow gotten into the bread bin and is making a compelling case for inclusion at the table. You finally get everyone seated, only to discover someone needs more milk. Someone else needs their toast re-buttered, and someone who needs a brief moment to stand in the pantry and scream silently into the flour sack. The jam appears, retrieved from under a stack of schoolbooks, having survived the night's chaos like a tiny, sticky survivor of the domestic battlefield. Let's talk about cleaning up. Breakfast dishes multiply when no one is looking. You swear you started with enough spoons, but by the end of the meal, you're rinsing forks for reuse and pretending no one noticed. There are more crumbs on the floor than on the breadboard, and the dog has licked so many plates you briefly consider promoting him to dishwasher. But the real marathon is getting everyone out the door. The kids fight over lunch pails, your husband is still searching for his hat, and the dog refuses to leave the kitchen. Just in case there's a bacon encore, somewhere a clock chimes, reminding you that school starts in exactly 8 minutes and you are somehow both too early and too late. In the end, you pour yourself the last lukewarm cup of coffee, surveying the aftermath. Sticky counters, empty jam jars, and the ghostly aroma of burnt toast. You take a breath, shake the crumbs from your apron, and tell yourself you'll clean up later, because breakfast, for the American housewife of the 1920s, isn't just the most important meal of the day. It's a high-stakes, semi-professional sport, and if you survive it, the rest of the day is just a cool-down lap. Suddenly, you're not just a wife, you're a domestic scientist. Magazines insist you optimize your ironing. Diagrams explain how to sweep more efficiently. You are the CEO of dust, and every minute not spent achieving scientific cleanliness is a minute closer to existential failure. This is the golden age of domestic manuals, each one thicker than your utility bill and twice as nerve-wracking. Every women's magazine on the newsstand screams the gospel of efficiency. How to arrange your pantry for maximum output. The secret science of boiling water. 10 time-saving tips for the modern homemaker. There are charts for folding sheets, graphs for starching collars, and step-by-step illustrations for scrubbing floors that look suspiciously like blueprints for small aircraft. There's even a word for it now, home economics. And, unlike your mother and grandmother, you aren't just learning how to fry an egg and mend a sock. You're keeping a ledger of household expenses, calculating the optimal rotation of undergarments, and running time and motion studies on your morning routine. The latest advice? Iron all shirts in one session to conserve fuel and preserve morale. The laundry process is now one step shy of needing its own project manager. You start the day with a notepad and a pencil stuck behind your ear, ready to jot down every spilled drop of milk and every stray crumb. Magazines say you should time your chores with a stopwatch. Imagine running your morning like a factory assembly line. Sweep hall, 3 minutes. Polish banister, 45 seconds. Lament the meaninglessness of it all, 30 seconds, tops. If you go over, you're not just inefficient, you're practically a national embarrassment. The language of the era is all about progress and science. You read about sanitary kitchens, labor-saving devices, and ergonomic mop placement. Advertisers claim the latest vacuum will liberate your leisure time, but the only thing being liberated is the dust from behind the radiator. Straight into your face. You're told that cleaning is no longer just drudgery. It's your contribution to the great American experiment. The home is your laboratory, and every casserole a carefully measured experiment in husband satisfaction. Let's not forget the experts. There are actual home economists on the radio now, dishing out tips with the confidence of generals planning an invasion. They insist you measure your flour by weight, not by eye, and that your kitchen triangle, sink, stove, fridge, should be optimized for minimum wasted steps. You map out your tiny kitchen in chalk, only to realize the fridge door blocks the cabinet and the stove is in a constant state of existential rebellion. But all this progress comes with a hidden price. Now, if your curtains aren't freshly pressed or your counters aren't gleaming, it's not just bad luck. It's personal failure. Your value as a person is measured in streak-free glass and perfectly crisp collars. Your husband comes home to inspect the perimeter like a particularly judgmental health inspector. And your mother-in-law brings her own white glove to family gatherings. It's not paranoia if everyone really is checking for dust. Still, you try. You track every penny, chart your chores, and keep a running tally of which days you're winning at housework. Every successful meal is another point on the big board of life. You go to bed at night running inventory in your head. 4 shirts ironed, 3 meals served, 2 children mostly clean, 1 mind still vaguely intact. And through it all, you realize the science of housework isn't about the work at all. It's about the desperate hope that if you do everything exactly right, the rest of life will stay under control. Or at least, you'll have the cleanest kitchen in the neighborhood, even if your sanity is on back order. You've got an electric mixer that could kill a horse and a fridge that occasionally emits the sound of doom. Every new gadget promises to save you time, but somehow you're just busier. And no, you still haven't figured out how to use that waffle iron without swearing. Welcome to the Roaring Twenties, where every appliance comes with a user manual thicker than your cookbooks and the very real threat of minor electrocution. The advertisements in your favorite magazines show a smiling woman, pearls perfectly arranged, surrounded by gleaming chrome gadgets, as if domestic bliss is only one push-button away. Reality check. You're holding a toaster that eats more bread than it toasts. And every time you flip the switch on the blender, you have to yell clear and hope for the best. Let's start with the refrigerator. It's the size of a Model T, hums ominously in the night, and needs defrosting by hand every other Wednesday, or else it'll create a tiny Arctic wasteland behind the butter compartment. Your mother-in-law is still suspicious of it, convinced it's unnatural to eat lettuce that hasn't wilted on the windowsill. The only thing chillier than your fridge is the look you get when someone finds out you're storing leftovers instead of serving everything fresh. The electric mixer, supposed to whip up angel food cake in minutes, but mostly it whips up anxiety. It clatters, shakes, and sounds like it's preparing for liftoff. The day you accidentally left it running and it flung dough across the parlor is still talked about in hushed tones at the neighbor's bridge club. The bread machine? You tried to use it once. Now it's where you store recipe cards and loose change. Let's not forget the waffle iron. It weighs as much as a bowling ball, needs a full 5 minutes to heat up, and produces waffles that are either soggy in the middle or hard enough to be used as roofing tiles. Cleaning it is an exercise in regret. You tried following the instructions once, but the results were so disastrous you considered faking your own death rather than explain the charred remains to your family. Everywhere you turn, there's another labor-saving device. A coffee percolator that makes coffee and a high-pitched whistling noise. A butter churner that claims to free your hands, but actually just traps them in a cycle of crank, spill, repeat. You're surrounded by whirring, spinning, sometimes sparking metal friends who promise more leisure time and instead deliver extra hours of troubleshooting and crumbs in new, previously unreachable places. The modern stove is another story. With more knobs than your radio and a temper to match, it turns every meal into a negotiation. Will it hold a steady temperature? Will it produce a blue flame or a faint smell of gas and doom? Each casserole is a gamble. Each batch of biscuits a leap of faith. You have developed a sixth sense for burnt edges and undercooked middles, a superpower born of self-defense. Then there's the radio, perched bravely atop the kitchen counter. It's supposed to offer cheerful news and upbeat music, but it mostly delivers static and the occasional report that makes you wish you'd never learned to read. At least the radio can't catch fire. Probably. But here's the twist. For all the headaches, for every dough, flinging mixer, and waffle iron meltdown you keep going, maybe it's the hope that someday all these gadgets really will save you time, and you'll finally get to sit down. Or maybe it's just the stubborn pride of being able to say you survived another round with the electric toaster. Because in the end, modern convenience is just another word for new kinds of trouble. And if nothing else, your kitchen is never, ever boring. Lipstick on, hair curled, dress starched, just in case the neighbor drops by. Your worth as a woman is measured in shiny floors and your ability to serve jello that doesn't jiggle itself off the plate. Even your depression must be tastefully disguised. It's not enough to simply run the household. No. In the world of 1920s suburbia, you're also expected to star in your own ongoing one-woman pageant. You wake up exhausted, but your reflection has to say, "I slept like a rock, and I love every minute of this." The fashion advice columns are relentless. Always present your best self. The magazine at the breakfast table, wedged between a coupon for bleach and a recipe for meat aspic, warns that a true lady never lets her slip show, emotionally or otherwise. Every detail is a performance. The rug is vacuumed in perfect parallel lines. Your children's faces scrubbed pink, and your smile rehearsed until it feels almost natural. It doesn't matter that you're running on 4 hours of sleep and a secret stash of chocolate hidden behind the flour. The important thing is that no one can tell. If your mascara runs, it's only because you were just laughing so hard at the church ladies' meeting, not because you cried in the pantry after burning another batch of scones. The pressure isn't just internal, it comes from all directions. Your husband expects the house to be a sanctuary, never a scene of struggle. Your neighbors, peering through eyelet curtains, note who hangs laundry with matching clothespins. Even the milkman's eyebrows seem to judge your porch sweep. If a child tracks mud onto the floor, you smile sweetly, clean it up, and pretend you love nothing more than a good spot of mopping. And then there's the weekly gauntlet of social visits. It's not enough to open your door. Your home must open like a magazine spread. Come in, the parlor's spotless and the tea trays ready. You've baked cookies, arranged fresh flowers, and positioned the good doilies in strategic locations to hide last week's coffee stains. You laugh at jokes, nod sagely at gossip, and never let slip how close you are to just shoving the whole lot into a closet and locking the door. The children are part of the act, too. Their hair is brushed, their socks match, and their manners are practiced until please and thank you sound suspiciously like a chant. If a tantrum erupts, you hustle them away with the speed of a trained stagehand. "So sorry. He's just a little overtired. Never mind that he's eaten nothing but sugar cubes since sunrise." Let's talk about the greatest illusion of all, your mood. No matter how tired, frazzled, or quietly desperate you feel, it must be hidden under a patina of cheer. Housewives' nerves? Never heard of them. You're just a little tired. Thank you. The doctor prescribes a tonic. Your mother-in-law recommends keeping busy. And the magazines suggest a little fresh lipstick and a long walk. Depression? No one says the word aloud. You fold it away in linen drawers and hope nobody notices the wrinkles. But here's the real trick. Sometimes the act works. Sometimes all the starch and smiles and perfect place settings really do conjure up a little bit of magic. For a moment, as the sun glints off the waxed floor and the scent of lemon polish hangs in the air, you almost believe the performance. You are the star of your domestic stage, the queen of jello and parallel vacuum lines, And nobody, absolutely nobody, will ever guess that you're just improvising the script. And on the days when it all falls apart? Well, that's why you keep the good apron in the drawer and the emergency chocolate on standby. After all, tomorrow's another show, and you always know your lines. You're tired. You're anxious. You're pretty sure your left eye just twitched. Enter the doctor, who explains, with a twinkle in his eye and a complete lack of understanding, that you have housewife's nerves. The cure? Something that comes in a brown bottle and tastes suspiciously like regret. This is the roaring 20s, but your mornings are less Charleston and more chronic unease. In a checked apron, everyone you know seems to be quietly losing it. But no one talks about what's really going on behind the bright lipstick and lemon-scented air. Your to-do list is longer than the novel you keep by your bedside for show, and the only thing running faster than you is your pulse when you think about ironing the curtains. Again, the doctor is always a man, always brisk, and always convinced the problem lies somewhere between your womb and your attitude. He listens to your list of complaints with polite patience, then prescribes rest, more fresh air, and, if you're lucky, a tonic that's 2 parts alcohol and 1 part snake oil. Your husband claps you on the back and assures you the doctor knows best. If you're lucky, he even offers to watch the children for all of 5 minutes, or until the next baseball game starts. Let's talk about that mysterious brown bottle. The label says for nerves. The ingredients say, don't ask. You're supposed to take a spoonful before meals, after meals, and sometimes, when nobody's looking, just because it's Tuesday. The first sip burns going down. The second is a little easier. And by the third, you're convinced the living room wallpaper is slightly more tolerable. Side effects may include dizziness, mild euphoria, and the sudden urge to buy more floral patterned tablecloths. Your friends all have their favorite remedies. Mrs. O'Malley swears by nerve drops she gets from her cousin in Cleveland. The church ladies circulate recipes for herbal teas guaranteed to calm you, though most taste like boiled lawn clippings and a broken promise. Your mother recommends a little sherry in your coffee, dear, which, in practice, means every cup of coffee is a potential party. The magazines don't help. Are you suffering from the strain of modern housework? Asks Ladies' Home Journal, before recommending deep breathing, positive thinking, and a brisk walk around the block in heels. If that fails, just freshen your lipstick. Apparently nothing soothes shattered nerves quite like Carmine Rose. Number 4. What's truly astonishing is how universal it all feels. The word nerves covers everything. Exhaustion, dread, sadness, frustration, actual medical conditions, and the natural urge to run away to Paris and never look back. You start to wonder if maybe there's something wrong with you, specifically. Surely Mrs. Thompson next door doesn't lie awake at night, wondering if the dust under the bed will ever win. But you catch the look in her eyes over the fence, and you know the nerves are everywhere. The cure, such as it is, becomes part of the routine. You measure out your dose, you try to rest, never successfully, and you keep your complaints neat and tidy, just like the parlor. To suffer messily would be unthinkable. So, you soldier on, 1 brown bottle at a time, telling yourself that tomorrow you'll feel better, tomorrow you'll wake up calm, tomorrow the doctor will finally believe you when you say, I just can't do this anymore. But until then, you hold on to the ritual, 1 measured dose, 1 deep breath, and the hope that maybe, just maybe, someone will invent a pill for husbands who leave their socks in the oven. For now, the nerves are just part of being a modern woman. And the brown bottle? Well, at least it's not another thing to dust. Congratulations. Your prescription for calm is filled at the corner drugstore. It's 80% alcohol, 10% sugar, and 10% hope. You're told it's non-habit forming, which is true if you never stop taking it. The pharmacist winks. You wink back, slightly more slowly. It's the 1920s, and the shelves of your local pharmacy are a wonderland of modern medicine, or what passes for it. Rows of patent bottles gleam like stained glass in the sunlight. There are pills, tonics, elixirs, and powders for every possible ailment, real or imagined, tired nerves, weak nerves, irritable nerves, and the particularly popular women's nerves. You only need to say you're feeling run down. And out comes a little bottle with a label promising tranquility, vigor, and, if you squint, a brief vacation from your own mind. Let's talk about the science, or rather, the lack of it. The pharmacist, a pillar of the community who smells faintly of menthol and secrets, is more bartender than chemist. He'll mix you up a special nerve tonic on the spot, complete with a paper label and instructions to take as needed, which is less a dosage and more a lifestyle. There's no regulation, no prescription required, just a nod, a knowing look, and maybe a whispered recipe handed down from the golden age of quackery. You're not alone. The tranquilizer craze is sweeping the nation. From bustling cities to sleepy towns, every magazine features ads, with smiling women holding brown bottles, radiant and clearly unaffected by dust, children, or existential despair. Doctor recommended, they claim, with pictures of men in white coats who definitely aren't actors. The promise is simple: peace, rest, relief from the crushing monotony of housework and the sharp edges of daily disappointment. You join the secret club. At Bridge Club, someone always brings a little something to stir into the lemonade. At church socials, Mrs. Hughes' punch has a certain sparkle. You trade tips, which syrup is strongest, which pills dissolve best in tea, who has the friendliest pharmacist. It's a quiet arms race of sedation, a genteel competition to see who can remain the calmest while the world spins ever faster. The effects are immediate. The noise fades. The dishes in the sink lose their sharp edges. The ache in your shoulders recedes. And for a little while, you remember what it's like to take a deep breath. The house is softer, the children less shrill. Even your husband's latest monologue about the car's spark plugs becomes almost bearable. You're not happy, exactly, but you're calm. And in 1926, that's close enough. But tranquility has a price. The bottle empties faster every week. You start keeping a spare in the pantry, just in case. The label says non-habit forming, but the truth is, life feels grayer without it. You're not addicted, just accustomed. A subtle difference that makes you feel modern and sophisticated, not dependent. You read the advice columns. Should I worry about my wife's tonic habit? And roll your eyes. After all, it's recommended by doctors and your pharmacist and your neighbor. It must be fine. The kids grow curious. What's that, Mom? It's for grown-ups, you reply, stashing the bottle behind the flower. You promise yourself you'll cut back next week, or after the next round of laundry, or maybe after the in-laws visit. And so the cycle continues. Work, worry, dose, repeat. The tranquilizer boom is in full swing, and you're swept along, smiling a little slower, breathing a little easier. If you think about it too much, it's unsettling, but with another careful sip, you don't have to. The nation is calming down, one brown bottle at a time, and for now, that's enough. Your kitchen now houses more medicine than food, laxatives for vigorous health, nerve tonics for the jitters, and, of course, a little something for sleep. No one questions why the cat is sleeping so much. It's the golden age of the American home pharmacy, and your cupboards look less like a pantry and more like a low-budget apothecary. There are bottles, jars, and boxes on every shelf, each one promising miraculous results with the faintest whiff of snake oil. The medicine cabinet, once a humble tin box nailed above the sink, now sprawls out across the kitchen, the linen closet, and, on especially trying weeks, your bedside table. Let's take inventory. First, there's the classic, castor oil, good for everything from tummy aches to general malaise, and recommended by doctors, grandmothers, and anyone else not planning to be in the room when you actually take it. Next, the mysterious blue bottle labeled Restful Night Drops, guaranteed to soothe nerves and banish unrest, which is 1920s code for contains enough alcohol to knock out a mule. There are little pink pills for headaches, chalky lozenges for female complaints, and a dark syrup for coughs that also works wonders on toddlers who refuse to nap. The laxatives are legendary. Every woman you know has a preferred brand, passed down like a family heirloom. You start to wonder if regularity is just a polite way of saying, "This is the only control I have left." Boxes of vigorous health powders sit next to tins of patent salves, ready to tackle aches, pains, and the creeping sense of dread that you might never finish the laundry. Half of what you own was prescribed for a cousin or left behind by a houseguest, and none of it ever expires, at least according to the instructions. There's a tonic for every hour of the day. Morning, a revitalizing elixir with a label boasting rare Peruvian herbs, and a secret ingredient that tastes suspiciously like bourbon. By noon, you've graduated to the nerve tonic, advertised in all the best magazines, complete with testimonials from actresses whose skin glows with the effort of pretending. After lunch, perhaps a little digestive aid, followed by a spoonful of sleep syrup around 2 p.m. Just to take the edge off. Dinner comes with bitters, and bedtime arrives with a ritualistic clinking of bottles that sounds like the world's least festive wind chime. The kids get their own versions, sweet, syrupy concoctions that promise to calm little tummies and encourage restful naps. The family cat, who once prowled the alleys with feral abandon, now spends most afternoons snoring in the sun, blissed out on a dropperful of whatever was handy the last time he raided the countertop. And you're not alone. Every house on the block is its own dispensary. At every social visit, you swap tips on which tonic really works, which one to hide from the children, and which should only be taken if the in-laws are staying over. No one bats an eye when you pass a friend a small vial across the garden fence. In this age, self-medication is practically a hobby, right up there with crochet and collecting recipes for dishes no one actually wants to eat. The miracle, of course, is that anyone ever eats actual food. Somewhere behind the cough drops and liver pills is a can of beans or a loaf of bread. But the real sustenance comes in doses and sips. A little hope at a time. You never really know what's in half of it, except that it's doctor-approved and widely trusted. And if the label says guaranteed safe, well, that's almost as good as a prescription. So, you line up your bottles at bedtime, measure out the day's final spoonful, and hope for a peaceful night, at least until the cat wakes up, or someone else in the house needs a little something for sleep. In 1920s America, the real secret ingredient in every tonic is the same: survival, 1 teaspoon at a time. Need a quart of milk, a bottle of laudanum, and some beauty tips. The pharmacy is your sanctuary, your therapist, and your silent accomplice. They know your secrets and, for a nickel, will sell you a new one. In the 1920s, the corner pharmacy is more than just a store. It's a community hub, an unofficial confessional booth, And, depending on the weather, the closest thing you'll get to a day spa. The bell jingles above the door as you enter, signaling to Mr. Gordon behind the counter that someone's here who needs more than just cough syrup. The air smells like camphor, licorice, and the quiet relief of possibilities. Shelves are lined with colorful bottles, boxes, and mysterious tins, each one promising a better life in 12 doses or less. There are two kinds of visits: the social and the medicinal. The social visit is all small talk and smiles. You chat about the weather, admire the new display of lemon drops, and maybe pick up a tin of talcum powder or a new lipstick shade. Rose Dawn, the latest color that will surely save your reputation at the next bridge club. But beneath the pleasantries, there's always an undercurrent. That's when you glance at Mr. Gordon, tilt your head just so, and he nods knowingly, sliding a discreet package across the counter, wrapped in brown paper and tied with twine. "For your nerves," he murmurs. He never needs to ask what's wrong. He already knows. The pharmacy is the original self-care center. Need to pick up your tonic prescription? There's no judgment, only a subtle wink and an offer to put it on your account. You can also buy a bottle of Mrs. Davis's liver invigorator, a box of headache powders, and a jar of beauty cream that smells suspiciously like last week's mints. In fact, you could walk in with a shopping list that reads like a ransom note, castor oil, soda crackers, hair dye, and enough laudanum to sedate a small circus, and nobody would blink. And oh, the advice. Mr. Gordon and his wife are fonts of gentle wisdom, handed out in careful doses. A sore throat? Try this syrup. Worry keeping you up? Maybe this powder, best mixed with warm milk. Your child won't stop sneezing? Here's a vapor rub, and if that fails, keep them home from school just in case. He'll even weigh your baby or measure your height, using tools that look suspiciously similar to the ones in the hardware store next door. But the best-kept secret of the pharmacy is its role as the neighborhood switchboard. It's where gossip is traded and reputations are quietly salvaged. If you need to know who just moved in 2 blocks over, or what happened to Mrs. Carter's infamous garden party, you'll find out in the cough drop aisle. No one ever admits to eavesdropping, but everyone leaves with a little more than what they came for. There's comfort in routine. Every Saturday, you join the line of women, each waiting for their turn at the counter, clutching a prescription or a recipe for liniment passed down from a grandmother. The men come too, mostly for tobacco, razor blades, and a quick word with Mr. Gordon about aches that never seem to go away. The children swarm around the candy display, eyes wide with longing, knowing that if their mother's shopping list is long enough, they might get a treat on the house. As you leave, the bell jingles behind you again, sealing another small chapter in the ongoing saga of community life. In a world that often feels too big, too fast, too noisy, the pharmacy remains a safe haven. Here, you are known, your secrets are kept, and for just a nickel, or perhaps a wink, there's always something new to help you get through the week. Because in 1920s America, the pharmacy is more than a store. It's the beating heart of the neighborhood, pulsing with hope, remedy, and the quiet promise that, whatever you need, you're not alone. Noon hits like a freight train. Lunch is a performance art involving leftovers, sandwich spreads of mysterious origin, and the hope that mayonnaise is still good. You debate napping, but instead, it's another tiny sip of Mother's Helper. Let's set the stage. The morning's energy has fizzled out like yesterday's ginger ale, and your apron feels suddenly heavier, weighed down by both gravity and existential fatigue. The house, which buzzed with breakfast drama only hours before, now hums with a softer, more ominous sound, the relentless tick of the kitchen clock and the faint, accusatory buzz of the refrigerator. Sunlight slants across the floor, picking out every crumb and sticky spot you missed in your earlier cleaning crusade. Your to-do list, once bravely itemized, now mocks you from the counter, halfway obscured by a stack of unpaid bills and a sticky syrup bottle that no one will claim. Lunch in the 1920s is not a meal so much as a negotiation. There's the leftover roast from last night, now cold, a bit tough, and faintly reminiscent of despair. You slice it thin, pile it on day-old bread, and pray no one asks for something else. A half-hearted salad appears, made with iceberg lettuce and whatever else hasn't wilted in the icebox. If you're lucky, there's a tomato. If you're unlucky, there's only another lecture from your husband about proper food economy, as he adds more salt than the Pacific Ocean. The children, of course, are unimpressed. They pick at their food, sigh dramatically, and ask if there's any chance of dessert. You mutter something about clean plates and good behavior, and wish you had the energy to enforce it. The dog lurks beneath the table, waiting to catch the first scrap of anything that falls, or, more likely, is strategically dropped by a co-conspirator in short pants. You consider a nap, but the universe conspires against you. The phone rings, the doorbell chimes, and someone outside starts mowing their lawn just as you contemplate closing your eyes. Even the radio, your usual lifeline, offers little comfort. The signal fades in and out. Music warbles, and the announcer's cheerful voice seems to mock your exhaustion. You turn the dial, searching for something soothing, but all you find is static and another lecture about the wonders of modern sanitation. Inspirational, but not enough to keep you from resting your head on the kitchen table for just a minute. Instead, you opt for another dose of Mother's Helper. The bottle's label promises energy and tranquility. In reality, it delivers a brief, fuzzy calm, a mental cotton blanket muffling the worst of your worries. For a moment, the stack of laundry waiting to be ironed seems less threatening, the dust less relentless, and the children's bickering blessedly distant. You're not quite yourself, but at least you're not overwhelmed. As the afternoon wears on, you rally, if only out of habit. Plates are cleared, counters wiped, and the kitchen, miraculously, resembles order. You check the clock, calculate how many hours remain until dinner, and plot the afternoon's battle plan. More cleaning, a few errands, and maybe, if you're lucky, a quiet moment with a magazine and your feet up. But probably not. The midday slump is universal, a secret handshake among housewives everywhere. You see it in the eyes of Mrs. O'Malley as she hangs her laundry, in the weary wave of the postman, and in your own reflection in the toaster, hair askew, lipstick fading, but still, somehow, standing. The day isn't over, but you've made it this far. And if the radio can't save you, at least the next cup of tea, or the next careful sip from the bottle might. Welcome to the longest hour of the 1920s housewife's day. You're tired, but you endure. After all, dinner is coming. And so is the next round of the great American juggling act. Your children have invented a new game called Let's Climb the Curtains. Their immune systems are a daily experiment. You're responsible for keeping them alive and entertained, with nothing but crayons and a vague sense of dread. Welcome to the 1920s, where childproofing means yelling "Don't touch that" from the next room and hoping for the best. There's no such thing as helicopter parenting, only the constant, low-level anxiety that one of your offspring might ingest something from beneath the sink or disappear into the neighbor's chicken coop. You haven't truly lived until you've rescued a child from the rain barrel or performed a mid-afternoon search party for a toddler last seen toddling out the screen door. There are 3 of them, each fueled by raw energy, corn syrup, and an unshakable faith in their own invincibility. They scale furniture with the determination of tiny mountain goats and the risk assessment skills of, well, tiny mountain goats. You glance up from your ironing to see a pair of legs sticking out from behind the drapes. Or the oldest attempting to create a flying machine using nothing but a chair and a strong sense of optimism. Your reflexes are lightning quick. But even you can't be everywhere. Sometimes you just listen for the silence. The surest sign that someone, somewhere, is making a decision that will cost you a night's sleep. Germs are a fact of life. And so is the neighborhood rumor mill. Mrs. Thompson claims cod liver oil can ward off anything, while Mrs. O'Malley swears by garlic necklaces. Your own strategy is more pragmatic. Scrub hands before meals. Don't eat the paste. And hope the chickenpox comes at a convenient time. Every sniffle is a crisis. Every bruise a potential scandal. You keep the medicine cabinet well stocked with bandages, ointments, and, just in case, a box of chocolates for the nurse. That's you. Boredom is the true enemy. The radio only goes so far, and indoor games quickly morph into indoor demolition derbies. On a rainy day, you try coloring books, marbles, or a rousing game of let's see how long we can sit still. Spoiler. The record is 4 minutes. You supply crayons, only to find someone has started a mural behind the stove. You offer a deck of cards, but the children use them to construct an elaborate trap for the family cat. The yard is both blessing and curse. A little fresh air can work wonders until someone comes running inside, covered in mud and shrieking about bees. You patch knees, soothe tears, and make another mental note to check the garden for poisonous plants. By mid-afternoon, you've refereed 3 disputes, rescued at least 1 child from a makeshift fort, and issued more safety warnings than the local fire brigade. Feeding them is its own adventure. You coax vegetables into soups and threaten to withhold dessert, but they seem to thrive on bread, jam, and forbidden sips of your ginger ale. You calculate how much food is required to keep them satisfied and how much will simply be thrown at the dog. Mealtimes are a whirlwind of elbows, requests, and the occasional, "I don't like this," from a child who loved it yesterday. But despite the chaos and the constant hum of panic, you do it. You keep them fed, mostly clean, and crucially, alive. At the end of the day, you tuck them into bed, counting heads and fingers, whispering a silent thank you that you survived another round. The house is quiet for a moment, but you know the games will resume at sunrise. Congratulations! You've just completed another level in the original anxiety sport. There's no trophy, no applause, just a faint trace of jam on your sleeve and the knowledge that, for one more day, you're winning. You escape for a visit. Really. A covert therapy session over coffee. Here, you swap stories, swap recipes, and quietly compare who has the best tonic. It's the 1920s version of a Facebook group, but with more cake and fewer trolls. The ritual is timeless. You straighten your hair, brush imaginary crumbs from your skirt, and grab a well-practiced smile. The moment you step through your neighbor's screen door, the weight of the day lifts just a little. Mrs. O'Malley greets you with a conspiratorial wink and a plate of cinnamon buns that somehow taste like comfort itself. For the next hour, your children become someone else's problem, usually left to the mercy of the backyard and a stern warning not to eat any worms. And you're free to settle into a creaky kitchen chair and talk. These afternoons are your lifeline. The conversation flows easily, moving from the mundane, where on earth to buy decent flour this week, to the deeply personal. Worries about sick children, the sudden temper of a husband, or the creeping anxiety that you're not measuring up to the impossible standard set by Ladies' Home Journal. There's a comfort in shared complaint. Everyone's tired, Everyone's fighting a losing battle with dust and dishes and dreams put quietly on hold. The tonic conversation is always handled with a delicate dance of euphemism. Have you tried that new syrup from Miller's? Mrs. Davis's drops are stronger, I hear. Someone will mention, ever so casually, that a teaspoon in her tea helps her manage the nerves. You all laugh, but you know that every woman in the room has her own little bottle tucked away, just out of sight. A secret handshake of survival. Cake is sliced, coffee poured, and recipes exchanged, though everyone suspects that Mrs. Thompson always leaves out a crucial step. Sometimes you share advice about raising children, sometimes just the reassurance that, yes, your curtains are crooked too, and no, you're not the only one who sometimes dreams of running off to Paris with a jazz musician. Occasionally, there's a competitive undercurrent. Who has the cleanest kitchen, the crispest linens, the most obedient children? But it's all softened by laughter and the solidarity of women who know that behind every immaculate parlor, there's at least one room where chaos reigns. Afternoon gossip is more than a pastime. It's how information moves. Births, deaths, new jobs, lost fortunes, news spreads faster than the postman on roller skates. You find out who's expecting, who's having trouble with the bank, and which household has a mysterious shipment of new furniture. These tidbits are gathered, analyzed, and occasionally weaponized. But mostly they're shared as a way of making sense of the world outside your kitchen window. There's also advice of the unsolicited and occasionally questionable variety. Mrs. O'Malley swears that rubbing onions on the soles of your feet will cure a cold. Mrs. Carter recommends vinegar for shiny hair and lemon for stubborn stains and even more stubborn husbands. Whether or not these tips work is beside the point. What matters is the sense of connection, the reminder that you're not doing this alone. And when it's time to leave, children rounded up, cheeks kissed, leftovers wrapped for tomorrow's lunch, you feel lighter. The burdens of housework and worry are a bit easier to carry when shared. You walk home with a fresh recipe, a bit of gossip, and the quiet knowledge that your friendships are as essential as any tonic in your kitchen cabinet. In the end, these afternoons are more than idle chatter. They're how you survive, not just through chores, but through laughter, tears, and the gentle reminder that, come what may, someone will always have a fresh pot of coffee waiting for you next door. The car crunches onto the gravel, your cue to transform into Stepford perfection. Dinner must be ready. Kids must look presentable. Your face must hide the day's existential despair beneath a tasteful layer of powder. This is the most dramatic hour of the day. All afternoon, you've been living in a quiet countdown, ears tuned for the telltale groan of the family car. The moment you hear it, adrenaline floods your veins. Not the good kind, but the type that makes you check your teeth in the toaster's reflection and question your life choices. It's showtime, and you are the leading lady in a play called Domestic Bliss. Let's talk staging. The table must be set, and not just set, arranged. Napkins folded, plates matched, a centerpiece of whatever didn't wilt in the garden or wasn't eaten by the neighbor's cat. Dinner simmers on the stove. Something hearty but not fussy, substantial but not showy. In the 1920s, a wife's reputation could hinge on the fluffiness of tea, her mashed potatoes, and the crispness of her fried chicken. Meanwhile, the kids are running wild, faces sticky with jam, and the sort of unnameable substances that seem to materialize only at 4:45 p.m. You herd them into the bathroom, wipe faces, straighten collars, and issue stern warnings about using your inside voice. And absolutely no nose-picking at the table. If you're lucky, they remember half of it. If you're unlucky, the memory fails them just as your husband walks in. You take a breath, slap on a fresh coat of lipstick, and hope the powder covers the dark circles from last night's insomnia. The smile you paste on is practiced and precise. It says, "Welcome home, dear," but also, "I dare you to ask about the dust on the bookshelf." Your eyes might betray the 1,000-yard stare of a woman who has refereed 6 sibling arguments, stitched a ripped hem, and explained why we don't eat paste. All since breakfast. The front door opens, and in he comes, smelling faintly of engine oil, fresh air, and something you can only describe as public. He drops his hat and coat, greets the children with a tired pat, and looks to you, the anchor of the evening. The performance begins. There are pleasantries to exchange, small talk to maintain, and, most importantly, a careful sidestepping of any mention of the actual chaos that defined your day. The mood must be light, the conversation pleasant, the children well behaved, or at least bribed with promises of dessert. But beneath the choreography, there's tension. You wonder if he'll notice the slightly burnt edges on the roast, or the fact that you served canned peas for the 3rd time this week. He wonders if you'll ask about the promotion at work, or worse, about the family finances. The unspoken contract is simple. He won't question the state of the house, and you won't question the state of his mood. Everyone is performing. Yet, every so often, the facade slips. Maybe you catch each other's eye during a lull in conversation and share a real, exhausted smile. A flicker of recognition that you're both just trying to survive this wild decade. Maybe he'll notice you look a little tired, and instead of a joke about beauty sleep, he'll quietly help clear the table. Or maybe, tonight, you'll both simply get through dinner without a single complaint, which, in the grand scheme of things, feels like a minor miracle. As the evening unfolds, the performance slowly fades. The children are packed off to bed, the dishes are stacked, and you finally sit for a moment of silence. 5 o'clock dread has passed. You've survived another day, powder intact, roast mostly unburned, and sanity only slightly frayed. And tomorrow, you'll do it all again, because that's the secret contract of 1920s marriage. Perform, endure, and find small, secret moments of joy wherever you can. It's cocktail time. The house is filled with the clink of ice, the laughter of grown-ups, and the quiet hope that gin can solve what the tonic could not. You toast to survival, or at least to making it to bedtime. Welcome to the sacred hour between chaos and collapse. The sun is setting, dinner has been served, and hopefully not too harshly critiqued. And you've entered the part of the day where the rules begin to soften. Children have been herded toward their pajamas, perhaps pacified with promises of a bedtime story or, for the bold, a leftover cookie. The house grows quieter, save for the distant squabble over bath toys, and you allow yourself a breath. It's time for the grown-ups to play at relaxation. You gather in the living room, the faint scent of lemon polish mingling with the sharper aroma of gin, vermouth, and bitters. In the 1920s, cocktails aren't just drinks, they're an escape, a ritual, and a badge of modernity. Prohibition laws are on the books, but nobody in your suburb takes them seriously. In fact, cocktail hour is a kind of gentle rebellion, a way to say, yes, we're respectable, but we also know where to find the good stuff. Somewhere behind the flower jar or hidden in the umbrella stand, there's a bottle with no label and a story you'd never tell the neighbors. The drinks are poured with theatrical flair. You watch as your husband or a guest measures out gin and dashes in a splash of tonic, slicing a lemon with the solemnity of a surgeon. There's a science to the evening cocktail. How many ice cubes? How many olives? How much you can drink before you're tempted to tell the story about the time you locked yourself out in your slip. The glasses are chilled. The laughter is warm. And for just a few minutes, the day's worries shrink to a manageable size. Conversations blossom. People talk about everything and nothing. Work, politics, the latest film. Who's scandalizing the neighborhood this week, and which cousin is secretly engaged. Stories are swapped like currency. The best recipe for rum punch, the quickest way to polish silver, the new jazz record that makes everyone want to dance. The tone is breezy, but you know that underneath, everyone is exhaling at last. For once, you don't have to pretend. A slightly crooked hem or a rogue dust bunny is no longer the end of the world. It's just something to laugh about over your second Tom Collins. If you're lucky, there's music. Maybe someone puts a record on, and the living room fills with a soft, scratchy melody. Maybe you and your friends sway gently in your chairs, or your husband pulls you up for a slow, silly dance. The world feels a little lighter, the kitchen a little less daunting. Even your shoes hurt less, though maybe that's just the gin talking. Of course, cocktail hour is not without its dangers. There's always the risk of overindulgence, of a neighbor knocking on the door at the wrong moment, or a child appearing wide-eyed to announce that the cat is wearing your new hat. But these small mishaps are almost welcome. They remind you that life, for all its pressures, still has space for humor and absurdity. As the hour winds down, you refill the ice tray, wipe the lipstick off the rim of your glass, and savor the calm that only comes when the day's performance is finally over. The laughter lingers, the last drink is toasted, and for a moment you feel not just like a housewife, but like a person worthy of rest, a little mischief, and maybe even a bit of happiness. In the end, cocktail hour is not about the cocktails at all. It's a soft exhale after a day spent holding your breath. It's the quiet hope that, with enough ice and good company, you'll have the strength to do it all again tomorrow. And for now, that's enough. Cheers. Pajamas, teeth brushing, story time, existential pleading. Getting the kids to bed is a 2-hour, 4-act drama with no intermission. You promise a tomorrow filled with joy, knowing full well you'll just be repeating today's battle. Welcome to the great bedtime pageant of the 1920s, a production that would put any vaudeville troupe to shame. It begins innocently enough. A gentle nudge toward the stairs, a suggestion that it's time to wind down, and a reminder that all the best children go to bed on time. The children, of course, sense weakness and immediately deploy their best stalling tactics. Someone forgets how to walk. Another claims to be so hungry they might faint. The youngest suddenly has a philosophical question about death, the stars, or why the cat hates them. The nightly routine is set in stone, but never the same twice. First comes the epic hunt for pajamas, clean ones if you're lucky, or whatever isn't inside out, backwards, or suspiciously damp. There are tears over missing buttons, complaints about itchy tags, and passionate arguments for wearing Halloween costumes instead. By the time they're finally dressed, you've negotiated 3 treaties and lost at least 1 sock to the mysterious black hole that lives in the laundry basket. Next up, teeth brushing. You hand out toothbrushes like a weary general distributing rations before a long march. The children attack the task with varying degrees of enthusiasm, often resulting in more toothpaste on the mirror, sink, and each other than anywhere near their actual teeth. You supervise, cajole, and finally just accept that minty breath now means breath vaguely less like jam and onions. At least the sink is clean, sort of. Story time is the carrot at the end of the stick. Each child picks a book, and naturally, they choose the longest, most repetitive story available. You read with theatrical gusto, channeling your inner stage actress, while your audience interrupts for questions, commentary, and the occasional debate over plot points. One drifts off mid-page, while another insists on just one more chapter. You compromise with half a chapter, which somehow takes longer than a whole one. But it's never just books and blankets. There are drinks of water to fetch, nightlights to adjust, and last-minute confessions. I forgot to tell you, I have to bring 12 cupcakes to school tomorrow. The parade of needs seems endless. Someone's foot hurts. Someone's stuffed animal is missing. The oldest suddenly remembers a secret they absolutely must share before midnight. You alternate between patience and pleading, knowing this is all just a performance, one you'll be expected to give again and again and again. Sometimes, in the quiet moments between requests, you look at their little faces and feel a pang of guilt for wanting them to just sleep already. Other nights, you're so tired you wonder if you could get away with skipping straight to good night and leaving the rest to fate. Eventually, the resistance fades. Eyelids droop. The chorus of, "I can't sleep," is replaced by the soft sound of breathing, the gentle clutch of a teddy bear, and, finally, peace. You tiptoe out, careful not to disturb the fragile calm, and close the door with the precision of a bank robber leaving the scene. Downstairs, the house feels bigger and quieter, echoing with the day's leftovers. You collapse on the sofa, knowing that in a few hours, someone will call your name in the dark, needing water, comfort, or just proof you're still there. But for now, you've won the nightly war. Tomorrow, you'll don your armor and do it all again. Because in the world of the 1920s housewife, bedtime is never just about sleep. It's a testament to your endurance, your creativity, and your unconditional, if slightly exhausted, love. The house is finally quiet, and yet, you're wide awake. Advice columns suggest warm milk, a hot bath, and, failing that, 2 tablets of blissful silence. You wonder if you're just allergic to peace and quiet. It's the strangest sensation. After a day spent wishing for a moment to yourself, you finally have it, and your brain immediately decides it's time to replay every embarrassing thing you've ever said at a PTA meeting. The kids are asleep, for now. The dog is curled up under the kitchen table, and your husband is snoring with the dedication of a man who's never had to explain why the laundry isn't dry. But you're staring at the cracked ceiling, listening to the hum of the fridge and the occasional creak of the house settling, and waiting for sleep to arrive like an unreliable streetcar. The 1920s are a golden age for both insomniacs and people willing to try anything once. The magazines brim with advice. 6 steps to sound slumber, most of which involve rituals worthy of a minor cult. A hot bath with Epsom salts is supposed to soothe your nerves, but the water is never quite hot enough, and the kids always used the last of the good soap for their mud pie experiments. You warm a glass of milk, swirl in a spoonful of honey, and sip it by the flickering light of the kitchen lamp. The taste is comforting, the results less so. If anything, you're now both wide awake and vaguely nauseated. Some women swear by counting sheep. You try it, but after number 38, your sheep have unionized, formed a jazz band, and are practicing the Charleston in your subconscious. Others say a brisk walk before bed will help, but it's midnight and the only thing outside is a very suspicious raccoon. So you make do with pacing from the bedroom to the kitchen, passing by the medicine cabinet just long enough to consider your options. Enter the pharmaceutical era's answer to insomnia. The sleeping tablet. 2 tablets of blissful silence proclaims the label in soothing script. You take one, waiting for that gentle wave of drowsiness, but instead, your mind is now keenly aware of the sound your own hair makes on the pillowcase. Was that always so loud? What's in these tablets anyway? And what would your mother say if she knew you were taking them? Probably nothing, because she's been out like a light since 8:30. Then come the housewife's superstitions. You rearrange the pillows, flip the mattress, and pull the covers up just so. Some nights, you try sleeping with the window open, a luxury advertised in every home journal. Fresh air for fresh dreams. until the train goes by at 1 a.m., and you're certain it's stopped just to make sure you never rest again. Even the cat has opinions about your sleep, climbing on your chest precisely when you start to drift off. Your mind races. Tomorrow's chores, the grocery list, whether the mailman noticed the state of your front garden. You replay every conversation, every offhand remark, every small failure. Even your triumphs seem more exhausting in the dark. The advice columns say to clear your mind, but they never say how to silence the relentless monologue of a 1920s housewife. At last, sometime between worry and resignation, you slip into a shallow sleep. You dream of being on a train, headed nowhere in particular, wearing pajamas that actually fit. Morning comes too soon. The alarm clock rings, the kids stir, and another day begins before you've even remembered to be tired. Sleep hygiene in the 1920s isn't about perfection. It's about survival, a little luck, and occasionally surrendering to the reality that rest is just another thing you chase, somewhere between clean floors and 2 tablets of blissful silence. The neighbors are close, but your thoughts are closer. The silence at night is thick with the things you can't say aloud. You stare at the ceiling, counting cracks and unfulfilled dreams, hoping that tomorrow's tonic is just a little stronger. It's a peculiar sort of loneliness. Living on a street lined with nearly identical houses, each one packed to the rafters with people, and yet, somehow, echoing with quiet. In the daytime, the world is filled with noise. The slam of screen doors, the distant buzz of lawnmowers, the chatter of Mrs. O'Malley 2 doors down, as she gives the postman a piece of her mind. But at night, the silence rolls in like fog, pressing against your windows, amplifying the soft sounds of your own worries. You know your neighbor's routines by heart. The precise moment Mr. Evans takes his evening stroll, the way the Simmons kids leave their bikes in your yard, the scent of Mrs. Carter's late-night baking drifting through the open window. You wave, you smile, you even exchange the occasional slice of cake or secret. But real conversation, the kind that digs beneath the surface, is as rare as a day when the laundry basket is empty. You try to fill the quiet. Sometimes you read advice columns by lamplight, nodding along with letters from desperate in Des Moines or lonely in Long Island. Other times you listen to the radio, hoping the static will drown out the soft ache of missing something you can't quite name. You make lists, groceries, chores, birthdays, things to say to your husband that don't sound like a cry for help. The longer the list, the busier you feel. The busier you feel, the less room for loneliness. But there's always that pause. After the last dish is put away, after the last child has asked for water, after the last story is told, it's just you and the hum of the fridge, the shadows stretching across the kitchen, and the persistent feeling that everyone else is living a brighter, fuller life. Even in a neighborhood that prides itself on community, you can't shake the sense that you're performing for an invisible audience. Always smiling, always fine, never letting the mask slip. You envy the women who seem perfectly content, who host bridge club and gossip without ever letting their voices tremble. Maybe they're just better actresses. Or maybe they've found some secret remedy that's stronger than the bottle in your kitchen cabinet. You wonder if they ever stand at the window at midnight, sipping cold coffee and letting their eyes sting with tiredness and envy. The worst loneliness is the kind you can't confess. It's not dramatic enough for rescue, but it gnaws at you all the same. It's the weight of unspoken disappointments, the grief for a version of yourself that got lost somewhere between the breakfast dishes and the bedtime negotiations. The tonic helps, a little, a chemical hush that blurs the sharp edges, but in the end, you still wake up to the same ceiling, the same cracks, the same hunger for more. And yet, even in this quiet, you find small moments of comfort. The softness of the pillow, the laughter that escapes in the dark. When no one is listening, the neighbor's light flicking on at midnight, proof that someone else is awake, wrestling their own unspoken aches. In these silent hours, you're part of a club you never meant to join, a secret sisterhood of women who love fiercely, endure quietly, and hope, always, that tomorrow's version of themselves will feel just a little less alone. Suburban isolation is the loneliest housewives' club, and the only membership requirement is a heart that keeps going, no matter what. Ads shout from every magazine, relieve your nerves instantly. The models are smiling, the slogans are soothing, and you start to believe happiness really does come in a bottle, preferably cherry-flavored. Welcome to the golden age of advertising, where Madison Avenue's best and brightest have turned the art of the pitch into something resembling a national emergency. You can't flip through a copy of Ladies' Home Journal or Good Housekeeping without being bombarded by promises of peace of mind, radiant energy, and a better you. All for just a dime a day. The smiling housewives on every page look impossibly serene, their lipstick perfect, their hair set with a precision that suggests they've never once heard a child yell, "Mom, the dog's eating the crayons again." It's hard not to feel a little jealous, or a little suspicious. The genius of these ads is in their language. Gentle, persuasive, and always reassuring. Doctor, recommended, pure and natural ingredients. The trusted remedy of mothers everywhere. You'd think all it takes to banish anxiety is a quick trip to the corner store and a bottle of syrup. With a name like Navola or Blissful Rest Elixir, they never mention the fine print. The main ingredient is often alcohol, or, if you're feeling fancy, a dash of something with a name you can't pronounce but your pharmacist winks at knowingly. Your friends gossip about the latest wonder cure the way others might discuss the stock market. Mrs. O'Malley swears by Calmolene, while Mrs. Evans is partial to Sleep Easy drops. You compare notes, share tips, and collect coupons clipped from the back of the cereal box. Some products promise to soothe your nerves. Others offer energy for housework. And a few claim to handle both, which feels suspiciously like cheating. It's not just the women, either. Men's magazines are full of ads for tonics to keep up with the rigors of modern business, though theirs often come with an added promise of masculine vitality. Even the children aren't safe. Children's Nerve syrup boasts a picture of a cherubic, wide-eyed toddler who has definitely never screamed for 4 hours because he couldn't wear his Halloween mask to church. The pharmacy counter, once a place of quiet dignity, has become a marketplace of miracles. The shelves groan with brightly labeled boxes, each claiming to offer instant relief. The pharmacist offers friendly advice. This one's cherry, this one's mint, and this one is, let's just say, it's an acquired taste. You walk home with your bag of potions and powders, wondering how you survived before the age of mass-produced hope. And the radio isn't much better. Tired? Overwhelmed? Don't let your nerves get the best of you. Try Restorer. There's a soothing piano in the background, a gentle voice promising you'll sleep like a baby and wake up ready to greet the day. Sometimes you catch yourself humming the jingle while you sweep. Proof that even exhaustion is no match for a catchy tune. And a little subliminal suggestion. Of course, beneath all the glossy optimism, you know the truth. No amount of cherry-flavored syrup can solve the laundry, calm a tantrum, or patch up an argument. But for a few minutes, the ads let you imagine that it might. And isn't that the real miracle? A moment's escape, a small taste of euphoria, and a world where relief comes in a bottle with a label you can trust. At least until the next issue of the magazine arrives. In the end, you learn to take the promises with a grain of salt and maybe a dash of gin. You're not fooled, not entirely, but when the house is quiet and your nerves are frayed, you can't help but glance at the latest ad and wonder, what if this one really works? After all, hope is the one thing they've never needed to advertise. Alcohol is illegal. But nobody said anything about nerve tonics. The pharmacy becomes the speakeasy. Your prescription is everyone's open secret. The line between medicine and martini blurs with each passing week. It's the era of dry laws, bootleggers, and jazz-fueled rebellion. But in the polite suburbs, the wildest parties don't happen in shadowy basements. They happen in living rooms, after the children are in bed, with a clink of ice and a wink from the pharmacist. The Volstead Act may have made booze verboten, but the American spirit, especially the Housewives, has always been more resourceful than obedient. You see, where there's a will and a laundry list of daily grievances, there's a way, and that way usually runs straight through the neighborhood drugstore. The shelves are lined with medicinal syrups, digestive aids, and tonics that promise calm, energy, and general wellness, all sold over the counter, and all, purely by coincidence, you're assured, about 40 proof. Labels read for nerves, for sleep, for mild palpitations, and, for those in the know, for entertaining. You sidestep the rules, trading secret recipes in the grocery line and recommending the strongest restorative to anyone looking particularly harried at the playground. At every bridge club and sewing circle, there's talk of this loophole. Mrs. Carter down the block keeps her soothing syrup in a cut crystal decanter, while Mrs. O'Malley has become a connoisseur of cough elixirs, rating them by flavor and kick. You share notes on the best brands and most creative ways to doctor a cup of tea. The pharmacist, never one to let an opportunity slip by, stocks his shelves with concoctions whose medicinal claims are as dubious as their contents are potent. With a wink, he'll slide a bottle across the counter, wrapped in brown paper, just in case you're feeling a bit overwrought. Social gatherings shift from overtly boozy affairs to more medicinal ones. The line between a girls' night in and a covert cocktail party gets blurrier by the day. No one serves gin straight from the bottle. Instead, it's mixed with lemon and tonic, or poured carefully into an empty cough syrup jar. The men may grumble about the lack of beer, but the ladies know the real secret. This is their loophole, their sly protest, and their way of maintaining sanity in a world that keeps inventing new ways to make life harder. Every magazine is full of sly winks, ads for family remedies that just happen to taste suspiciously like something you'd order in a bar. Even the radio gets in on the act, offering cheerful jingles for serene evenings and restful sleep, and you don't have to listen hard to hear the subtext. In the privacy of your own kitchen, you can toast your ingenuity with a glass of relief, no lawman the wiser. And let's not forget the sense of camaraderie. In a decade famous for bathtub, gin and rum running, the suburban housewife finds her own brand of rebellion, swapping tonic samples and sharing laughs over the absurdity of it all. You learn to trust your friends with your recipes and your pharmacist with your secrets. In the end, prohibition doesn't really mean no alcohol. It just means finding new ways to enjoy it. For the 1920s housewife, it's less about breaking the law and more about keeping your wits and your sense of humor intact. The tonic bottle may have replaced the cocktail shaker, but the results are the same. A little laughter, a little relief, and the quiet, shared knowledge that sometimes surviving the day is the real victory. Because in the battle between law and life, never bet against a determined housewife with a kitchen full of medicine. Every page of Ladies' Home Journal insists you can be perfect with enough elbow grease and maybe a drop of nerve restorative. You wonder how many editors are secretly on the stuff, too. Open up any women's magazine from the 1920s and you're greeted with a world that's equal parts fantasy and silent hysteria. Every cover features a serene, unflappable housewife, cheeks perfectly rouged, apron spotless, eyes sparkling with the kind of hope that looks suspiciously pharmaceutical. The headlines are promises in pastel. How to raise angels, cook like a queen, and never have a bad day. 10 ways to make your husband adore you, and your meatloaf. But between the recipes and the sewing patterns, there's a constant drumbeat of advice for the tired, anxious, and quietly overwhelmed. You can feel the pressure with every glossy page. Do more, clean better, smile brighter, bake higher, and if you can't, maybe try a discreet spoonful of this new tonic. The advertisements are as much a part of the magazine as the recipes. Every solution for a spotless house or happy marriage comes with a helpful suggestion for a nerve tablet, elixir, or powder. Keep your composure with Calmaline, Mother's Little Helper. The secret to sanity. Sometimes it feels like the only thing holding the household together is whatever's in those brown bottles with the flowery labels. The stories themselves are a dizzying carousel of perfection. There are step-by-step guides for achieving floors that shine like a mirror. Children who mind without complaint, and husbands who never stray from the dinner table. The secret? Never admitting you're tired. Or, if you do admit it, make sure it's in the context of a testimonial about the latest restorative advertised in the next column. But the subtext is loud and clear. It's okay to be overwhelmed, as long as you look good doing it and buy the right product to take the edge off. If you struggle, you're simply not modern enough yet. The unspoken promise of every column is that you can buy your way out of misery. One bottle, jar, or box at a time. The magazine's letters to the editor are a symphony of desperation and forced cheer. Dear Ladies' Home Journal, I'm so grateful for your suggestion of lavender-scented soap. It's the only thing that gets me through my 6th load of laundry each week. Thank you for the tip about Calmaline. I've never felt more ready to face my children's piano recitals. You know, reading between the lines, that everyone is reaching for something stronger than scented soap. Even the recipes have an undercurrent of competitive survival. Serve this at your next bridge party and watch the envy bloom. Every holiday spread is an Olympic event, every centerpiece a gauntlet thrown. The implication is that if you just try hard enough, you too can achieve this level of domestic mastery. So long as you also remember to smile, moisturize, and take your tonic with every meal. And sometimes, when the day is long and the children are loud and the floor refuses to shine, you find yourself flipping through the magazine late at night, a little desperate, a little envious, and a little comforted by the thought that someone else, somewhere, is reading the same article and feeling exactly the same way. Because in the end, the real service these magazines provide isn't the recipes or the cleaning tips. It's the subtle reassurance that, for all the dreams they're selling, none of us actually lives in the perfect picture on the page. We're all a little tired, a little frazzled, and maybe just a drop away from feeling like we belong in the story. And if all else fails, well, there's always the next issue, promising a new dream and a better cure just a month away. Between the preacher, your physician, and your husband, you're told to smile, serve, and sedate. The patriarchy prescribes obedience, preferably with a mild, sedative chaser. You live in a world meticulously structured around authority. Every day is a careful performance for 3 different audiences, none of whom will ever truly understand what it's like to walk a mile in your sensible, low-heeled shoes. The preacher's Sunday sermons set the tone for the week, all honeyed words about duty, grace, and the quiet glory of sacrifice. You sit, hands folded, nodding along, while inside, your brain makes grocery lists and wonders whether that grace will extend to your laundry pile. The doctor, meanwhile, is the high priest of modern science, armed with a stethoscope, a brisk bedside manner, and a prescription pad. He listens to your complaints, looks at your tired eyes, and confidently announces it's nothing that a little more rest and perhaps a bottle of nerve tonic can't fix. He doesn't ask what rest looks like when you're responsible for 3 children, 2 pets, and a house that collects dirt like it's a competitive sport. He just pats your hand, reassures your husband that you're just a little run down, and moves on to the next patient, never quite seeing you at all. And then there's your husband, provider, protector, and, as the magazines say, the head of the household. He comes home expecting a calm haven, a warm dinner, and the kind of quiet conversation that involves no mention of bills, sick children, or existential dread. He wants a smile, a drink, and the certainty that you're coping. Never mind how many times you've reached for that brown bottle tucked behind the flower jar. It's an invisible choreography. The preacher calls for obedience, the doctor prescribes tranquility, and the patriarch expects order. Your role is to blend the 3 into one seamless performance. You're to pray, medicate, and smile through anything, maintaining the illusion of control even as the demands tug at you from every direction. If you falter, if you break down, speak up, or stop caring, you risk becoming the cautionary tale, the wife who couldn't handle it, the mother who lost her way, the neighbor who just needed a little more faith. But beneath the layers of expectation, you notice the cracks, the whispered gossip at the church picnic, the quiet commiseration at the pharmacy counter, the looks exchanged at the playground when someone's voice trembles just a little too much. You're not the only one struggling to keep up. The other women see it too, and you share small, subversive victories, a sly joke about doctor's orders, a swapped recipe for the strongest nerve tonic, a silent, knowing nod in the checkout line. You learn how to bend the rules without breaking them. You pour a little extra medicine in your tea. You skip a Sunday now and then, citing the nerves, of course. And you let your children eat cold cereal for dinner when the day just won't cooperate. Small rebellions, invisible to the men in charge, but lifelines for you and your friends. You wonder what it would be like if the roles were reversed, if the preacher had to mind 3 children under 5, if the doctor spent a week in your kitchen, if your husband spent 1 day walking in your apron. You suspect the sermons, prescriptions, and expectations might look a little different. In the meantime, you keep playing your part. You pray for patience, you swallow your remedy, and you serve dinner with a smile. But, sometimes, late at night, you dare to imagine a world where you're in charge, where obedience isn't prescribed, where your voice is heard, and where survival doesn't require quite so many sedatives. Until then, you do what women have always done. You adapt, you endure, and you find your strength in the quiet corners, just out of sight of those who think they're in charge. Everyone insists they're fine. You know the truth. Behind every cheerful wave is a woman who just refilled her prescription. You wonder if anyone will ever admit how tired they really are. In the neighborhood, fine is more than a word. It's an all-purpose mask, a quick-draw shield against awkward questions and emotional honesty. The air is thick with it, as if the hedges and white picket fences are built from the same stuff. You wave at Mrs. Evans from your porch. She waves back, both of you smiling like extras in an advert for flour. But you saw her at the pharmacy, tucking a bottle of Mother's Helper into her purse with the same furtive care you use to hide your own tonic behind the oatmeal. It's a game everyone knows how to play, and the rules never change. After all, in the 1920s, the social contract is built on cheerful denial. bridge club is a flurry of compliments. What a lovely dress. Your garden looks divine, all while everyone's eyes are a little too bright, and laughter comes a little too quick. The moment someone's voice wavers or a smile slips, someone else rushes in to patch it over. You must just be tired, dear. We all are. The implication: don't let the mask drop, whatever you do. No one wants to be the one who brings the room down, who lets in the draft of real feeling. Your friends, Mrs. O'Malley, Mrs. Carter, the new woman down the block, are all fine too. You know their tells. The sudden interest in recipes no one actually wants. The way conversation turns when someone asks about the children. The nervous glance toward the kitchen cabinet where the nerve drops are kept. Sometimes you catch each other's eye across a crowded room and share a tired, knowing half smile. For a moment, you almost say it. I'm exhausted. I can't do this today. But then someone else laughs, and the moment passes. The magazines make it clear that fine is the expectation. Advice columns urge women to focus on gratitude, to avoid negative thinking, to power through the blues with cleaning or baking or a fresh application of rouge. If you're still struggling, try a tonic, the ads urge, and you'll be back to yourself in no time. As if yourself was just a mood and not the tired, raw edge beneath the surface. The doctor, the preacher, even your husband, everyone wants you to be fine, not just for your sake, but for theirs. No one wants the complication of someone else's pain, but every so often the cracks show. Someone misses a club meeting, someone else takes ill for a week, and the stories swirl until she reappears. Smile a little more brittle than before. The children notice, too, in the way adults speak in low voices, or the sudden ban on questions about why Mrs. Evans is crying in the backyard. You wonder if your kids see the same look on your face. Sometimes, when the day is just too heavy to carry. Still, the game continues. Fine is the password that keeps you in the club. You trade recipes, share gardening tips, and pass along the strongest recommendations for a good night's sleep. But behind closed doors, you exhale, sometimes into the darkness, sometimes into a pillow, sometimes into the comfort of your tonic. You wonder if things will ever change, if someday women will look at each other and say, "No, I'm not fine," and that's okay. Until then, you keep up the act. You wave, you smile, you serve cake with a side of forced cheer, and you silently hope that someone, somewhere, will finally say what everyone is thinking. The secret epidemic rolls on, invisible but everywhere. And every so often, when the mask slips, you catch a glimpse of the real strength it takes to be fine in a world that never lets you be anything else. By the end of the decade, tranquilizers are big business. Housewives are the most loyal customers. No one's quite sure if the medicine is working, but sales figures definitely are. It's the closing act of the 1920s, and the American pharmaceutical industry has discovered a gold mine, one lined with row upon row of brown glass bottles, syrupy elixirs, and chalky tablets, all marketed with a wink and a reassuring slogan. The very word calm is everywhere, splashed across the pages of magazines, echoed in pharmacy window displays, woven into the radio jingles that drift through open kitchen windows. And who is buying it? Housewives. Millions of them. The very engine of the American dream is being quietly, chemically soothed. Walk into any pharmacy, and you'll find a dizzying array of remedies, each one promising not just relief but transformation. The labels offer restful sleep, peace of mind, freedom from nerves, all conveniently available without a prescription. It's medicine as magic, and the nation is eager to believe. Behind the counter, the pharmacist, equal parts confidant, bartender, and salesman, keeps the good stuff within easy reach for anyone who looks a little frazzled or lingers too long by the tonic shelf. The marketing is relentless and expertly targeted. There are glossy ads showing elegantly dressed women beaming over dinner, children, and always a tidy, sparkling home. You begin to wonder if the key to happiness really is just the right dose of syrup, and whether there's any limit to what a determined housewife can endure with a little help. Behind the glamour, though, there's a sharp reality. The world is changing fast. Expectations are rising, and the old solutions, prayer, fresh air, hard work, can't keep up. The medicine cabinet becomes a fortress against worry, exhaustion, and the gnawing sense that maybe, just maybe, you're not as together as you ought to be. The big companies know exactly what they're doing. They launch new calming products with the fanfare of a Broadway premiere. Pharmacies compete for who can stock the most brands, each with its signature color, flavor, and promise. The statistics are staggering. Sales figures climb every quarter, rivaling even those of tobacco and soap. Newspapers report the boom with thinly disguised awe. A tranquil nation. Women lead the way. Behind the scenes, executives toast their own ingenuity, raising a glass to the brilliant, lucrative fear of being too anxious to keep up. Of course, whether the tonics work is a different matter. Some women swear by their chosen elixir, convinced it's the secret to a happy marriage and dust-free windowsills. Others are less sure, but keep dosing anyway. Because stopping means risking the return of nerves, insomnia, or the creeping suspicion that it was never working in the first place. You know women who mix brands, swap recommendations, and quietly joke that if they ever stopped buying the stuff, the stock market might crash all over again. It's an open secret, this business of sedation. No one talks about dependency, or the possibility that the cure might be part of the problem. The nation just keeps swallowing, stirring, and sipping, too busy and too tired to ask too many questions. The children learn to recognize the sound of a bottle being uncorked and the scent of cherry syrup in the air. Husbands appreciate the calm, most of the time, without giving much thought to the price. So the machine rolls on. Manufacturers expand, pharmacies flourish, and every American home adds another bottle to the shelf. Maybe the medicine works, maybe it doesn't, but the business of calm is booming. And as the decade draws to a close, there's one thing everyone can agree on. Nobody does tranquility quite like a nation desperate to buy it by the teaspoon. As you drift off to sleep, bottle on the nightstand, you wonder if tomorrow will be different. Maybe you'll wake up refreshed. Maybe you'll just need a little less help. For now, sleep comes softly, wrapped in a fuzzy blanket of chemistry and hope. It's the end of another long, looping day, and the house is finally quiet. The kind of quiet you used to long for in the middle of breakfast chaos or the after-dinner rush, but now feels like a heavy hush settling over everything. The lamp glows softly in the corner, casting warm light across the stack of magazines, a half-finished letter, and the familiar, half-empty bottle of restorative. Your mind drifts between memories of today's small victories and the ever-present to-do list waiting for you on the other side of sleep. You pull the covers up, listening to the symphony of the house at night, the creak of settling floorboards, the hum of the refrigerator, sounding faintly like a lullaby or a far-off train, the gentle snore of your husband who fell asleep before you even put your hair up. You think about your children, finally, miraculously, asleep, and wonder if they'll remember these years as golden or just very sticky. Your body is tired, but your thoughts flit restlessly, questioning, wishing, replaying the day's mistakes and small triumphs in equal measure. On your nightstand, That little brown bottle is both comfort and confession. It's a ritual now, part of your wind-down routine, tucked between a last-minute prayer and the hope that tomorrow you'll be strong enough, organized enough, cheerful enough to need a little less help from chemistry. The label promises rest and calm, but what you really crave is the sense that maybe, one day, you won't need it at all. Tomorrow is always out there, hovering just over the horizon. Maybe tomorrow the toast won't burn, the kids won't fight, and the ironing will take half as long as usual. Maybe you'll find a moment for yourself, just a few quiet minutes to breathe, or read, or sit in the garden and feel the sun on your face. Maybe tomorrow you'll get through the day with just coffee, or with laughter, instead of a liquid lullaby. Or maybe it'll be exactly the same as today. A mix of exhaustion, routine, small joys, and another measured dose of calm. You're not alone in this. Across town, across the country, millions of other women lie in bed just like you, tracing patterns on the ceiling, making silent promises to themselves. Some will keep those promises, some will forget, and some will simply do their best and start again the next day. The nation's housewives are a chorus of quiet, stubborn hope, believing in a better day, or at least a better mood, just over the next sunrise. The truth is, history isn't made up of grand gestures or easy answers. It's built from mornings that start too early, afternoons that blur together, and nights that end with a sigh and a small swallow of something sweet and strong. Tomorrow is never certain, but it's always a chance to try again. So you close your eyes, surrender to the warmth of your bed, and let the fuzzy comfort of sleep wash over you. The world will wait. The house will wait. Tomorrow is another day, and if you need it, there's always another dose. But for now, there's peace in the pause, in the quiet between one day and the next. And sometimes, that's all you really need. Dusting the parlor while dodging toy cars, boiling laundry on a July afternoon, and wrestling with the Hoover vacuum, all without breaking your perfectly rolled hair. Forget CrossFit. If you survive a day in 1920s housewifery, you could outpace any modern gym rat, and your biceps are sponsored by sheer panic and Procter and Gamble. Let's get one thing straight. Modern fitness trends have nothing on the daily marathon that is 1920s housework. Sure, you could pay for a gym membership and jog on a treadmill, but why bother when your morning routine already includes carrying buckets of water up the stairs and beating rugs until your arms threaten mutiny? Each task is its own event, and the penalty for losing is not just a missed rep, but the judgmental gaze of your mother-in-law and the terrifying return of the dust bunnies. Laundry day alone is a triathlon. You begin by sorting endless piles, whites, colors, delicates, and the mysterious unspeakable. Haul everything outside, where the washtub sits like a baptismal font for hope and sweat. You crank the wringer until your hands ache, boil water over a fire until your face is redder than your favorite lipstick, and scrub collars with enough force to sand a deck. If the weather is hot, congratulations. You've combined cardio, strength, and sauna therapy in one morning. Then there's the vacuum cleaner, the Hoover, a metal beast weighing more than your youngest child. Pushing it across the parlor rug is a full-body workout, especially when it jams up with a rogue marble or a Lego left behind by an enterprising toddler. The roar is deafening. The dust bag is fickle, and you sometimes wonder if it's actually cleaning or just rearranging dirt in artistic patterns. Your heart rate spikes, your triceps flex, and your mind races to find excuses in case the neighbor just happens to drop by before you're finished. Don't forget the art of window washing, balancing on a rickety stool, stretching to reach the corners, and avoiding the dreaded streaks require both grace and nerve. It's yoga, Pilates, and a test of faith all at once. If you slip, the only thing bruised is your pride, and maybe your hip. But that's nothing a dab of liniment can't fix. Sweeping and mopping are endurance sports in their own right. The dustpan never catches everything. The mop water is always either too hot or somehow ice cold. You chase crumbs under the table, wage war on sticky spots, and lunge at cobwebs with the enthusiasm of a fencer in a championship bout. If you want a real challenge, try getting the kids to keep their shoes off the floor you just cleaned. It's less an exercise in discipline, more a lesson in humility. Even meal prep has its own physical challenges. Kneading dough for bread, pounding meat for dinner, whisking eggs until your forearm cramps. These are moves you won't see in any fitness video, but you perform them daily. By the time dinner's ready, you've completed a full circuit, complete with stretching, squatting, lifting, and occasionally sprinting to keep the sauce from burning. And through it all, you manage to keep your hair in place, your dress unwrinkled, and your patience mostly intact. Who needs spin class when you can carry a toddler on one hip, groceries on the other, and still manage to answer the door with a smile? By sundown, you've run a personal best in every event. You flop into your chair, muscles trembling, hair only slightly undone, and realize you've survived another day of housewife athletics. Forget the medals and ribbons. The only reward you need is a cup of tea, a quiet moment to yourself, and the knowledge that tomorrow's competition is already warming up in the laundry basket. The doorbell rings, and suddenly you're hosting a surprise etiquette Olympics. Doilies must be straight, conversation must be sparkling, and nobody must know you almost burned the pot roast again. If nerves were currency, you'd be a millionaire. Except you'd spend it all on soothing syrup by sundown. It's the 1920s, and no event strikes fear into the heart of a housewife quite like the unexpected arrival of her in-laws. They appear on the porch without warning, hats perfectly perched, eyes already searching for dust on the windowsill. You force a smile, smooth your skirt, and whisper a quick prayer to the household gods that the parlor is free of toys, socks, or any evidence that actual children live here. The next hour becomes a frantic ballet. You whirl through the house, straightening cushions, fluffing curtains, and silently cursing the dog for shedding an entire second dog onto the carpet. Every move is choreographed, every gesture rehearsed. Your hands tremble as you set out the good china, the set you inherited and never use, except for high-stakes moments like this. You mentally calculate how many times you can safely apologize for the state of the house before it sounds like a confession. Hospitality in this era is an art form, and you're expected to be a grandmaster. The tea must be poured without splashing. The conversation must be both lively and utterly inoffensive. And the snacks, whatever you can cobble together on short notice, must look like they came straight from the pages of Ladies' Home Journal. You worry the jello is too wobbly, the cookies too flat, the jam not quite as homemade as you let on. The in-laws settle onto the sofa, faces composed, eyes scanning for faults. Your mother-in-law offers a tight smile and a barrage of helpful observations. You've rearranged the furniture. Interesting choice. I always thought the parlor looked best with the curtains open. You know, in my day, we never let the children have jam before dinner. Each comment lands like a polite grenade, and you scramble to diffuse it with laughter or a change of subject. Your husband, of course, is no help at all. He's charming, oblivious, and suddenly very interested in the sports section. The children sense the tension and begin an elaborate game of how much mischief can we cause before mother snaps. They chase each other through the hallway, narrowly missing a priceless vase, while you issue warnings through a clenched and well-practiced smile. At some point, You serve the pot roast, praying the burned edge is hidden beneath a mountain of potatoes and gravy. The in-laws dissect each bite with the quiet scrutiny of food critics, pausing occasionally to reminisce about how tender roasts were in the old country. You nod, pour another round of tea, or something stronger, discreetly added to your own cup. And try to remember if you've thanked them enough times for the cut glass candy dish they gave you for Christmas. Dessert arrives, and with it, a small measure of relief. The conversation drifts towards safer ground, weather, bridge scores, and the relative merits of garden chrysanthemums. You sense the finish line approaching and dare to hope you'll make it without incident. Then, just as the mood relaxes, someone brings up how hard it must be to keep house with the children underfoot these days. You laugh it off, resisting the urge to drink straight from the syrup bottle. When they finally leave, waving graciously from the porch, you collapse into the nearest chair. Shoes off, dignity only slightly bruised. The house is a disaster. The nerves are shot, but you survived the etiquette Olympics once again. As you sip your soothing syrup and watch dusk settle over the quiet street, you remind yourself, if you can handle this, you can handle anything. Even if you have to burn another pot roast tomorrow. Stacked between recipes and utility bills are ads for mail-order courses promising to turn you into a gourmet chef, a child psychologist, or a radio repair expert by next Tuesday. Each course comes with hope, a monthly payment plan, and a quiet sense of dread that you'll never finish lesson 1. It's the 1920s, and the American housewife has just discovered a brand new avenue for self-improvement. The wide, wild world of correspondence education. The ads promise transformation with every stamped envelope. Unlock your hidden talents. Earn a diploma from home. Be the envy of the bridge club. The pitch is irresistible. In an age when most women's ambitions are boxed in by the walls of their home, the idea that you can reinvent yourself by post, without ever leaving the kitchen table, sounds like magic. So you sign up, or at least you consider signing up. For the price of a week's groceries, you can get glossy pamphlets that turn up in the mail, stuffed between catalogues and grocery circulars. The first lesson arrives. Basic French cooking. You clear a corner of the dining table, sharpen a pencil, and open your new textbook to a world of soufflés and sauces you've only ever seen in the movies. For a moment, you dream of dazzling the neighbors with a perfect croque, monsieur. Then the baby starts crying. The potatoes boil over, and you remember you're still in your apron, up to your elbows in dishwater. The lesson sits, ignored, while life happens around it. Days turn into weeks, and soon you have a tidy pile of unopened packets. How to understand your children. Abandoned during a toddler tantrum. Practical radio repair, derailed by a power outage. Modern poetry appreciation. Misplaced when you used the workbook to mop up a spill. The mailman gives you a knowing smile as he delivers your advanced cake decorating packet, and you start to feel like he's silently judging your progress. It's not that you're lazy or lacking in ambition. Far from it. The truth is, there's simply too much to do. Between meals, mending, child wrangling, and the eternal quest for clean floors, there are precious few quiet moments left for self-actualization. But each time a new lesson arrives, hope stirs again. Maybe this one will stick. Maybe you really will become an amateur psychologist, able to diagnose the reason for your youngest's ongoing war with the family dog. The courses themselves are a mixed bag, some informative, some absurd, and some barely more than pamphlets filled with dubious advice. Communicate with confidence. Be your own plumber. Master the art of conversation in 10 easy steps. You work through the occasional chapter after dinner, trying not to nod off mid-sentence. Sometimes you gather with friends to compare notes. Inevitably, you discover that everyone else is also just a little behind on their lessons. In this way, education by correspondence becomes a new sort of community project, a shared joke, a collective sigh, and an ongoing experiment in optimism. The best part? You don't actually have to finish. The thrill is in the possibility, the idea that at any moment you could become someone entirely new, equipped with French, cake artistry, or the ability to repair the radio when it goes quiet during your favorite program. No one checks up on your progress, except maybe the mailman, and the certificate at the end is more aspirational than real. In the end, the pile of lessons is a quiet testament to your hopes and distractions. Maybe you'll finish them one day, maybe not. But for now, you keep signing up, just in case. Because in a world that keeps trying to box you in, even a little envelope of possibility is worth its weight in hope. Every town has its own secret code, a raised eyebrow at the market, a whispered recommendation for Mrs. Harding's restful drops, a knowing glance at the pharmacy window. You're part of an underground society where everyone is both a patient and a practitioner, and nobody ever says what's really wrong. On the surface, the 1920s American suburb hums with polite routine, garden parties, PTA meetings, church picnics, and bridge club on Thursdays. But beneath the doilies and afternoon teas lies a different kind of network, a shadowy web of coded language and silent understanding, woven mostly by women who know that sometimes the only way to survive is to band together quietly. It begins in small ways. Maybe you're in line at the bakery, and Mrs. Carter leans in, voice barely above a whisper. "How are your nerves, dear?" You know she's not asking about your mood, not really. She's checking to see if you need a new tip for a remedy she's just discovered. One that doesn't taste quite so bitter, or one the new doctor in town will write out without asking too many questions. The language of hysteria is all subtext. Hands lingering a moment too long on someone's arm, eyes darting to the corner pharmacy as you pass, invitations to drop in for a cup of tea that might mean a good cry, and something stronger than chamomile. It's a code passed between generations, refined by necessity and sealed by shared exhaustion. Your mother taught you how to bake bread and how to interpret a neighbor's suggestions about the best time to see Dr. Green. Your best friend knows exactly what it means when you say, "I've had a bit of a day." She offers a quiet place to sit, a slice of cake, and a sample of her latest restful drops. No questions asked. These networks are as much about protection as they are about relief. After all, the outside world, your husband, the preacher, even the family doctor, often dismisses a woman's suffering as nerves, overwork, or simple weakness. So you learn to speak in riddles. You ask for the recipe you forgot last week, meaning the pharmacist's latest blend. You borrow flour or eggs and return with a knowing smile and a discreet little bottle wrapped in a kitchen towel. At social gatherings, the code gets creative. Someone always brings a cake laced with a dash of sherry for the flavor, and the conversation inevitably turns to how well everyone is sleeping these days. You hear whispers about a neighbor who needed a little rest at the sanitarium, and everyone nods. No more details required. If you catch someone with red-rimmed eyes at church, you don't ask questions. Instead, you slide next to them in the pew, quietly passing along the number for a new, discreet doctor who won't bother the husband with unnecessary details. Sometimes, it's funny. You learn to laugh at the absurdity. How a jar of cough syrup is the town's worst-kept secret. How every recipe exchange includes a sly nod to who has the strongest tonic. The men roll their eyes, convinced that women's talk is all gossip and nonsense. but you and your friends know it's nothing less than survival. But there's a serious side too. For all the whispered jokes and coded winks, you realize these networks are lifelines. When a woman disappears for a while, the network checks in, delivers casseroles, and makes sure her children have clean clothes. If someone's hysteria gets too loud for comfort, the network pulls her close, reminding her she isn't alone, even if she can't say what's wrong out loud. In the end, the secret language of hysteria is just another proof of women's ingenuity. When the world refuses to listen, you learn to speak in a way it can't quite hear, protecting each other and yourself, one whispered recommendation at a time. When the world is too much, you hide behind a tattered copy of The Chic or lose yourself in an agony aunt's latest advice. Fictional scandals, melodramatic serials, and etiquette disasters are far easier to handle than your own, especially when paired with a hot bath and a discreet medicinal nightcap. The 1920s American housewife knows escapism isn't just a luxury, it's a survival skill. With a house full of noise and obligation, slipping away with a book becomes the quietest rebellion. You keep your favorite dog-eared romance stashed beneath the flower canister, ready to retrieve the moment you hear the words "I need you" shouted from across the house. The pages are worn soft, the corners bent by a dozen hurried readings, always in 5-minute snatches, sandwiched between boiling potatoes and refereeing squabbles over crayons. Novels open a portal to other worlds. While your children plot a siege on the parlor curtains and the radio sputters out bad news, you vanish to deserts with dashing sheiks, bustling English country houses, or gritty detective stories where the biggest problem is whether the butler did it. Fictional heroines have problems, sure, but they're rarely asked to make dinner for 7 with nothing but potatoes and regret. Their predicaments are dramatic, glamorous, and, best of all, temporary. You can close the book, and the chaos vanishes, if only for a moment. Advice columns are their own peculiar comfort. There's nothing quite like reading about someone else's laundry disasters, difficult in-laws, or worries about proper social behavior. The agony aunts respond with gentle authority and a remarkable amount of nerve-tonic euphemism. My dear, sometimes a little restorative is just what a lady needs. Sometimes you take their advice. Sometimes you just marvel at how much better you feel knowing you're not the only one who can't get Jell-O to set. Magazines bring melodrama right to your kitchen table. Each issue promises a new serial. Tales of runaway brides, long-lost relatives, or families who've never once spilled milk on a freshly polished floor. There are etiquette columns to reassure you that forgetting to write a thank you note isn't the end of civilization, and how to politely handle a neighbor who's just a little too interested in your cleaning routine. You circle tips, cut out recipes you'll never make, and laugh at the relentless optimism of the new woman promising to balance motherhood, a career, and a social life without ever breaking a sweat. Sometimes you even manage the ultimate escape: a hot bath, a good book, and the door firmly locked. For a few precious minutes, the world is reduced to scented steam, whispered dialogue, and the sweet taste of sleep syrup disguised as a respectable nightcap. You let yourself drift, knowing the house won't burn down in the next chapter. Probably. But reading is more than just an escape. It's a form of solidarity. A whispered reminder that, out there, other women are struggling, dreaming, and coping just like you. It's the knowledge that somewhere in a different city, or just next door, another housewife is laughing at the same serialized disaster, secretly wondering if she could pull off a turban and a mysterious past. So you tuck your book back under the flower, fold your magazine, and rejoin the fray, armed with a few new ideas for tomorrow's dinner, a tip for removing ink stains, and the comforting sense that, Even if you never get to Paris or marry a sheik, you'll always have the next chapter to look forward to. And really, sometimes that's all you need to keep going. So tonight, as you settle deeper into your mattress, no springs poking your back, no fear of your toddler setting the living room curtains on fire, and no mysterious brown bottles lining your nightstand, maybe pause for a second and send a silent nod to the millions of women who survived the roaring, nerve-jangling 1920s, one chaotic day and one dubious tonic at a time. Because for all their struggles, absurdities, and the mountains of impossible expectations, those housewives found ways to persist. They joked behind the laundry line, they built covert support networks over coffee, and they did the best they could with what they had, even if what they had was just enough time to sneak a nap and a second dose before the dinner bell rang. It wasn't glamorous, it wasn't easy, but it was real. And every perfectly set table, every wobbly jello mold, every desperate call for just 5 minutes alone, it all stitched another row into the messy, indestructible quilt of American resilience. Tonight, be grateful for your quiet, your clean sheets, and the right to decide whether or not you ever want to see a dust mop again. Take a deep breath. No doctor's note required. Because history isn't just the wild stories in our textbooks, it's the echo of ordinary people, doing their best with a little hope, a lot of humor, and the occasional pharmaceutical assist. As you drift off, let the worries of the day melt away, replaced by a gentler kind of calm. Tomorrow is coming, and unlike in 1926, you're allowed to hit snooze. Good night, and may your sleep be deep, your dreams absurd, and your house forever free of nerve tonics, unless, of course, you need them for the plot twist.